learning about environment. If you check around, there is no green anywhere.
Simon, an aspiring journalist, embarks on an investigation into his father's mysterious murder within the boundaries of one of Kenya's largest wildlife conservancies, the Kiptum Nature Conservancy. As a severe drought takes hold, Simon's quest to uncover the truth shifts, and he evolves into an activist revealing the collateral damage caused by a warming world.
Why did they kill him?
We do hear what people go through. Most of the time in the news, we do see what's happening in those areas. We lose people. It's very minimal per day, of course. And we are not so focused about that. Ourselves, we are just enjoying, visiting, we're looking at the animals, but we never, we don't concentrate much on the ones who are protecting those animals, or those guides that are telling us how those animals are, or giving us that leisure. So what I want the film to portray was for its unity and also understanding.
The documentary has received widespread acclaim. After its premiere in June 2024 at the Tribeca Film Festival, it went on to win the Best Director award.
The film has also shown in places such as the Rain Dance Film Festival in UK, where we won Best Documentary. It was also screened at Zanzibar in July. At the moment, we're having a very limited run at Unseen Cinema. Unfortunately, it ends tomorrow, Thursday. That said, this is very preliminary. What we're trying to do is put together some funding and a plan to have a proper premiere, proper screenings, and most important, impact screenings, right? Because we feel that this film should be seen at the very, very grassroots where it was filmed and its other such communities.
Jacqueline Masharia for Cinemas and Theatre.
A very good morning to you. Thank you very much for watching KBC Channel 1. You are in time for BizCheck. My name is Betty Kiptum. Over the next 2 hours, we have quite some conversations lined up for you. Our first conversation is on matters food security, ensuring that Kenya is food secure. What are we doing to get to that level? The second conversation will be on matters ESG, that is environment, social and governance. How are corporates ensuring that their businesses are being practiced in a sustainable and ethical manner? And lastly, the last conversation will be on matters managing the public wage bill. We shall be speaking with Lynn Mengich, who is the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. But first, we want to get into that conversation on matters food security. And in studio with me is Eliud Mutahi, who is on my far left. He is the project manager at Africa Harvest, as well as Fresha Mwebia, who is on my immediate left, the Chief Executive Officer at Jufra Food Processors Limited. Thank you very much for joining us. Agriculture is the mainstay of Africa. Kenya is, it's also true for Kenya. And of course, it employs majority of the population, and a lot of people depend it for income. We have seen at times that there are bumper harvests in one side of the country, another side of the country is missing food, and there are some issues there in terms of market linkages. So let's just start with where we are in terms of ensuring that our people are food secure. I'll start with you, Eliud Mutahi.
Yes, good morning, viewers. I'm Eliud Mutahi from Africa Harvest, and we are here to discuss matter relating to our national food security. Yes, I agree. Sometimes even when you look from the time since October last year, even now we are still receiving a lot of moisture. And from the last season, we had a good harvest. Our stores could be full. But when we come to issues of matters regarding to the food security, we are discussing this matter in line with what our people are getting here. And this is a national issue. So when we talk about food security, We are not discussing about Rift Valley, where is a food basket, or Central, where we get milk and honey. We are also talking about Turkana, which is the farthest and sometimes affected by drought. If you go to record and data, we see in Turkana, food insecurity is more than 66%. So when you come to this matter, we really need to look to the people who are in Central Rift Valley and those who are in Turkana. Are they getting enough food? Because when we define food security in regard to the nation, is that everyone is getting food, and food under the Food Security Act of 2027 defines that is a basic human right. Everyone has a right to access food. And in where place people are not getting enough, the government is responsible for that. And in relation to agriculture, which was devolved, is a devolved sector at the county government. Now the county government bears the greatest responsibility to ensure its people get enough food. So when we discuss of bumper harvest, let's look into places like Turkana, where we have frequent drought. So it needs to cut all over the country.
Right.
And ensure that everyone is getting enough food.
Right.
And when we discuss food, we discuss in matter of accessibility and affordability. Even if we go to the supermarket and see the prices have gone down, has it gone down even to the person who is in area that is prone to drought? Yeah.
All right. Let me bring in Fraser to the conversation. You've listened to what he's talked about. Of course, we've seen food prices being high. We've seen a slight decrease right now. How do we ensure food sustainability?
Thank you, Betty. My name is Dr. Fraser from Jufra Food Processors, and I'm glad to be here. Food security. There are key things that if you don't talk about that, you will not be food secure. He's talked about issues of affordability. Food security is a right for every Kenyan. And it is important to ensure that every Kenyan is able to afford food. So when food has been produced, maybe one part of the country, and possibly that place it is affordable, but another one it is not affordable, it is an issue. So it also takes us to an issue of food distribution, because we need to ensure that where there is glut, we look at where there is food deficit and ensure that every Kenyan is able to access that food, and through that accessibility, then we make it affordable for the Kenyan. And the other aspect is that when that food is accessible to the Kenyan, what is the safety of that food? So aspects of food safety is very important, so that we ensure that for Kenyan to be food secure, they should be able to eat food that is safe for them. And on top of that, is this food nutrition-wise secure, to ensure that as Kenyans are taking food, that food is able to do what it's required to do in the body, and lastly, the quality. What is the quality of that food? As that food, as we grow our food, there's so many aspects that we need to look at to ensure that that food is grown well, is produced well, it is stored well. Even in terms of distribution, it is distributed using the right channels, using the right mode to ensure it is safe, it is secure, and Kenyans are able to access it.
Right. Let's delve into the matter of distribution and accessibility. Of course, there was a time when we saw some parts of the country were going through drought. Another part of the country, cabbages and milk were being, going to waste. So where is the disconnect in terms of getting this food from where there is a bumper harvest to the people who actually need it? I'll start with you, Eliud.
Yes, Kenya is not a very young nation. Now we are at 60. And if I could recall the statement said by our founding father when we are getting we are celebrating our first, is it Jamhuri Day, he talked about poverty, he talked about illiteracy and diseases. And he said those are the things that he's going to fight. Up to now, 60 years, we don't have those structures. We don't have good structures to fight poverty. People are still dying or are still going hungry. In record, we have 36% of our children have stunted growth. Where are we going wrong in food security? In fact, even you check the SDGs, the three that anchors the 17 SDG is no poverty, zero hunger, and good health and well-being. Those are the key agendas that anchors development of a growing nation. So we must look at our structures. Where are we going wrong? Is it in production? Is it in post-harvest management? Because those are the two key areas where we are able to sustainably feed our nation. 30% of the harvest go to waste. We need to put good structures to ensure that food is not lost. We need to put good structures on production. You find an acre of land, if we consider meat production, is giving us less than 20 bags, of which, if we can maximize on production, it can give us more than 40%. So we need to look onto those structures where we produce, we increase the productivity and production of our land, and then we check on food losses. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the two key areas we need to check on. Right.
I see you, Dr. Fraser, nodding your head in agreement there. Please share your sentiments on that.
Yes, thank you. On top of those structures, there are things that we need to bring on board, issues of innovation and technology. I remember during COVID 2020, the country was locked. And that time I was working in the Ministry of Agriculture. And the technology that was used to monitor food under lockdown was GIS that was able to bring to the attention of the policymakers where food is, where there is glut, and where there is deficit. And then from there, the structures is talked about, distribution structures, storage structures, and all that. There was support to ensure that that food is transported from where there is a surplus to where there is a deficit. And during that lockdown, we never heard of any Kenyan dying of starvation. Why? Because the country went higher in terms of innovation and technology. And we need to continue doing that to ensure that we don't go back or we don't slide back. We need to ensure that we consistently continue using these innovations and technologies to ensure that even today we don't see people, like you're talking about cabbages being given to cows, while they were being grown by a farmer to be given to human beings and getting money or making incomes. We need to ensure that cabbage is taken where it's not there. Let me also say that there are also other technologies that we need to use to increase our productivity. Still the GIS, talking of suitability. Our country is made of various agroecological zones. And each zone is suitable for something. Technology is able to tell us where it's suitable to do maize, where it's suitable to do rice, where it's suitable to do cabbage, where it's suitable to do sorghum and everything. And when we get that information, the farmers there need to be supported so that they are able to optimally produce that. Because that technology is able to tell us that if you take maize where it's not suitable, then the investment there will be far higher. You need to invest more, the farmer will need to invest more, the government will need to invest more, so there is need for Kenya to use the suitability mapping for our country and for each food item, so that, number one, the farmers are able to optimally produce and the productivity is able to go high. And they are able to also put money in the pocket. Number two, the country is able to make use of the vast land that we are using. The other thing that I think needs to be brought on board is policy. Policy needs to be brought on board to support those structures and those strategies to ensure that every actor is able to be enabled to do their thing right. Let me say this. I've just talked about 2020. There was almost a direct policy that was able to support the private sector, you know, because the private sector is able to when they know that there is milk that is being poured in Nyandarua, they have mechanisms of immediately, without a lot of protocols, go to Nyandarua, get milk, and take it to where it's not. Mm-hmm. So policy needs to see how do we support the private sector to ensure that the private sector is able to do that business, because once we do that, we bring in competition, and when we bring in competition in the sector or in agriculture, the prices automatically go down. So food, once prices go down, is able to be accessible and affordable for Kenyans.
I was speaking to the COMESA Competition Commission, and they were saying that there's a problem in terms of food prices because they're going higher. Farmers are getting poorer. They're not, getting a return on investment. The problem could be trade practices across the agriculture value chain. So as private sector players, what can be done? We understand that value addition will definitely increase the cost of the commodity at the end. But what can be done to make sure that it is sustainable and affordable, especially for the common mwananchi?
I'll go back to policy.
Mm-hmm.
Policy actually is a big thing that informs everything that happens in the food sector.
Okay.
Policy affects how trade is done. Policy affects how processing is done. Like us, we do processing. For us to do processing sustainably, we need to be supported to ensure that the farmer where we are getting the raw materials from is supported to grow. And not just to grow, to even afford the farm inputs. Because for Kenyans to access food, the farmer needs to be supported to access farm inputs at the right time, the right inputs, the right quantities, and also the right capacity. So the farmer extension in this country right now is ish. Capacity to the farmer needs to be taken down where the farmer is, so that the farmer is enabled to grow the item, the food item that is required, so that people like us will be able to off-take it, prepare it, and take it to the market, to the Kenyan. And that actually is informed by policy. When taxes are so large for the Kenyan, when farm inputs are unaffordable, along that chain, that food chain will have a problem. Because by the time it is coming to a processor or a trader or a supermarket, the prices are too high. And let me ask you, Betty, have you gone to a shop and asked a shopkeeper, a shopkeeper asked you, how much will you buy sugar from me?
No.
Or have you gone to a supermarket and asked that question? The answer is no. You go to a supermarket and simply meet a tag that I'm selling this. It is take it or leave it. How come when it comes to the farmers, they will come and ask, how will you buy my maize? We have had this question being asked the government, tununulie mahindi vizuri, tununulie maharagu vizuri, tununulie this vizuri. Why? It's because there is something that is not coming out very right. Policy. These things are being actually affected by policy. The policy makers, and especially in the agriculture sector, need to actually realize that every Kenyan, irrespective of which sector you are in, at the end of the day, in the morning, food will be required on the table, the breakfast table. Lunch, the same. Tea break, the same. Dinner, the same. Meaning that it is a major sector that needs to be addressed very seriously.
Yes.
Two, if you look at maybe the funding in the sector, I hear right now it's around 3%. But according to the Marable Convention of 2063, we are supposed to be at 10%. We are very, very far. Yet every Kenyan, irrespective of where you are, even you at KBC, you're in the media, you need food from morning to evening. So policy needs to address this sector.
Policy.
And not just that, look at the chain that this food is going through, all the way from the input suppliers. Can they be enabled to do that business at input supply level so that the farmer is able to access inputs the right time and when they require them and what they require? Okay. Then when the farmer is able to do the right thing because they have the right inputs, then they are able to do the right thing. They're able to put their money in the pocket, and they're able to push that food to trade. That food is able to go to the supermarket. That food is able to come to the table, including this water. This is food.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Daktari, for that. Yeah. Eliud, I'd like you to chime in on that that matter.
Jufra, those we are working, Africa Harvest is working very closely with Jufra, and also partnering with other organizations with a project for drought tolerance crops. And when she talks about agriculture, especially on extension being issue, when this sector was devolved, the model changed, the system changed. It now became a demand-driven service where farmers are now supposed to go and acquire information from the sector, rather than what used to be. Those who remember those old days, extension officers used to visit farmers. They have lead farmers. They give them equipment for farming. There were spades, there were forks, jebbes. In every village we had lead farmers. Extension officers went to scout crops. How are they performing? These days, once because of fundings, there are no such services. Farmers are the ones going to acquire the information. Then we look at the age bracket. What is the farming average age? It's more than 60%. The non-productive consumers are more than 84%. Those people who are being fed are more than 8%. The people who have been left to farm are the old age. They will no longer concentrate on the high extensive farming system. They will just go for subsistence, for what they can provide for themselves. And she talked about policy in the education. We have compulsory subjects, of which I know there is mathematics, there is English and Kiswahili. We heavily rely on agriculture. If there could be a change of some compulsory subject, probably we had agriculture in that line. A lot of our young people would understand what is agriculture and what it means for future generation. So let us not leave the old age to do farming for us. Let's involve the young people. And we have that program that we are working closely with you for Africa Harvest, is engaging youth in the farming system. And we have very many nodes where they can plug in. We have in seeds production, we have in production, we have in transportation, and we have in trade, the processing, value addition. There are so many areas youth can be plugged in producing for our nation. Yes.
I think for the young people, they do not want to look at agriculture as the way most of our parents used to look at it. They want it to be a business that you can, live off of, something profitable. And one area that they can easily plug in is the innovation and technology bit of it. And understanding that climate change impacts African agriculture a lot. How do you foresee African agriculture, Kenyan agriculture as well, moving into climate smart practices? I'll start with you.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, in the in the project and Africa Harvest, as Jufra, we are very grateful because Africa Harvest has come in and done a great thing because they have come and mobilized the farmer. And he's talked about the youth. Actually, the project is looking at making 120,000 jobs for youth in the country by 2027. And watch this space, Betty. We are getting there. We are getting there, and we are very happy that Jufra, we are part of that. Of course, for us, Jufra, we are not everywhere. In terms of the project, we will be doing that in Meru County, in Taita Taveta County, and in Tharaka Nithi County. And we are not doing every crop. We are doing the drought-tolerant crops. You've talked about issues of climate change. Actually, for us to ensure that the drought-tolerant crops are making decent jobs for the youth, it's a beautiful thing. And I'll tell you that so far, we've already seen youth using technology. And like you say, personally, I've been in the agriculture sector. And one of the things that I have faced, like you said, is that we are having an aging population that has been left in the farms. Our moms and our shushos are the ones that are in the farms. And we have been talking about technology, making agriculture attractive. One of the things that is happening in this project that is beautiful is that when you bring in technology, you don't need to call the youth in.
They will come.
They are coming.
Yeah.
They are coming. Let me just give you an example.
Yeah.
Last week, Africa Harvest mobilized some meetings for me, and I went and met a whole over 50 youth waiting for me so that we engage on how they will farm for Jufra, so that Jufra becomes their market, And as we do that, we want to ensure that we are able to give them value for money. So one of the things is that we are not working alone. As we work with Africa Harvest, we have other stakeholders on board. We have the Minister of Agriculture who have the information on what the youth needs to do. How do we ensure that the youth, one, is able to use technology that is able to increase their productivity within a small, One of the questions I was asking those youth, do you have farms? They told me, we don't own, but we can access. They can access. And they told me, so then what do you require? Information. And we realize information is there. And that is why we are talking about policy. There should be enablement to ensure that farmers are able to access this information. And the youth told me, if we are able to put money in our pockets, hatuendi mahali, na hatutaki jobs za nje, tunataka kufanya kwetu Kenya, ukiona mam akigrow, ukiona watoto wako akigrow, si ukiwa ngambo. That was them in a place in Meru, a place called Siodhirai. And they told me, we want our jobs in the country. We want our jobs in our own farms, because we have farms. And thank God to the project. We have ICRISAT and MasterCard Foundation and Egerton University that is coming with hybrid and well-selected high-yielding varieties that are able to give high yields in a small section. So ours is to ensure that the youth is able to access inputs, and they have the information on what to do. And at the end of the day, at the end of the season, when they are able to make sure that they are able to put money good enough for 6 months in the pocket, the youth will not go home. And so I was able to do contracts with them, that they will be growing the sorghum for Jufra, they'll be growing the finger millet for Jufra, they'll be growing the pearl millet for Jufra, so that on my side, I'll be able to prepare that food and bring it to Nairobi, where you don't have sorghum, where you don't have the farms, in Mombasa, and in other urban centers, and also to the Kenyan population. Betty, let me tell you, at Jufra, we are addressing issues of food security through processing, having realized that Kenyans are facing what we call hidden hunger. We eat food, but our bodies are still hungry, because what we have eaten is just food that is too highly processed. It doesn't have the required micronutrients. It doesn't assist our bodies. It doesn't do the things that are required in our bodies. But at the end of the day, our bodies will grow, but the inside of us is still hungry. It's called hidden hunger. That's what we are fighting. And then we realized that when we highly process our maize, we highly process our rice, we highly process our wheat, we are actually finding ourselves in hidden hunger. Yet, when I look at Nairobi, that is actually the food that you'll find in the fast food places, the mandazi, the chips, the hamburgers, what? And a research that was done by the Ministry of Agriculture, headquarters here, and the Ministry of Health in 2018 brought out that aspect that Kenyans, we are facing hidden hunger. It was done in the 47 counties, and hakuna county haikuwa na vitu tatu mbaya. Either there is an issue of a high preference of non-communicable diseases, or there is an issue of low intake of food, or there is a over nutrition or under nutrition, or micronutrient deficiencies. Those 4 issues were in all the 47 counties. That map is there. And meaning what? We are facing hidden hungers, but our bodies look okay.
Right.
No wonder you find even diseases. We are very prone to diseases. We are very susceptible to diseases.
Okay.
So we are coming in because that research also told us that in Kenya, we have foods that are going to take care of those issues. And DTCs, incidentally, these are what in Kenya we have been calling traditional foods. The sorghums, the millets, the palm millets, the dengus, the njahe, the cowpeas. Those things are our indigenous food here.
Right.
They have all that we require to take care of hidden hunger.
So that means there is need for a lifestyle change among Kenyans. And there are people who've been calling them slow foods. You know, the way you go for chips, that is fast food. Now this is slow food. So what can be done to ensure that more people are moving in that direction, taking the traditional foods? And this will be probably our last question before your closing remarks, so please keep it short. Eliud.
Maybe before I address that question,
yes, please.
When it comes to agriculture, the space, agricultural land, is being pushed far away from the high lands we knew to now the semi-arids, arid and semi-arid. And as Dr. said, we now need to move from maize to other traditional crops with improved variety that can perform better than maize. We understand the change in climate. We are having drought and sometimes extremely bad temperatures. And as Africa Harvest, we are now in 14 counties dealing with crops that are suitable in that area. Kenya, we have a lot of research information that is gathering dust in our research institutes. And as Africa Harvest, we are there to link the research institutions and the farmers. Let the information, we have enough that have been researched for our country. Let's now take that information to our farmers. Let's not over-rely on maize. There are other crops that can perform better than maize in those areas. If you to go to Kiambu, now Kiambu is turning to an estate rather than the coffee plantation we used to know. So we need to be very careful.
Okay.
We may talk more about technology, the use they are getting, but where will they get food? They need food.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I will give you 30 seconds each to give me your closing remarks. Kindly, Daktari.
Thank you. We need to up our game in terms of sensitizing Kenyans on health feeding, because when you feed well, you actually keep away diseases. And God gave us a good country, a good land, with good arable land. And it's like there is nothing that cannot grow in Kenya. As we have been doing with Africa Harvest, this sensitization is only in 14 counties. And I believe, I'm very happy that here we are now talking to Kenya. And I would request that this doesn't become the last time that we are here sensitizing Kenyans on ensuring that we are able to eat crops that are growing in our ASAL areas. These are ASAL areas that for a long, long time were like forgotten zones. Today, these forgotten zones are able to give us crops. And that is why the Africa Harvest and the ecosystem where we are part of, we are seeing a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, because as we start engaging youth, we can see excitement, we can see, they are coming out of their own volition, they are not being pushed, we are not giving them money to come, we are not giving them lunch to come. They are coming because they know what they are looking for. Okay. Some of them have already started putting money because they are using technology now to do what they are required to do. Okay. So I would say let's up the game in terms of conversation, so that these DTCs will be in other counties, because it's not only the 14 counties that are experiencing drought or climate change impacts.
Thank you.
Even others are experiencing. So let's have a concerted effort as all stakeholders in Kenya, because we are all eaters.
Right, we are all eaters. Thank you very much, Daktari. Eliud, 2 sentences, please.
Okay, to the youth, we have enough land, and there is opportunities in agriculture. Let's transfer that technology to agriculture, and let's build our nation. When the old age is gone, who will provide for us?
That is a very good question and a good place to end the conversation. If you're a young person who is watching, it might be time for you to get into the agriculture space. I have been speaking with Eliud Mutahi, Project Manager at Africa Harvest, as well as Dr. Fresha Mwebia, who is the CEO at Jufra Food Processors Limited, just giving us their insights on how to achieve food security for this country and ensure that the systems work. Well, this is BizCheck. When we are going to take a break. When we come back, we talk about corporate practices that are sustainable. Do stay with us.
What are you guys talking about? Or you heard the new rumor I bought a new car?
Tito, please give us a break. You're talking about this car like forever. Doesn't it even get old?
Maya, the dog house, we did not see any kettle. A dog house is called a kennel. Oh. I think it's very much Maalim. So we noticed the kennel. Kennel.
Malima was just been wondering what is the difference between petrol and moutata.
Sorry?
Moutata.
You are too angry, sir. You should watch yourself lest you get an ulcers of the stomach or even worse.
Harambee Stars will kick off their 2025 AFCON qualifiers campaign with a match against Zimbabwe on Friday 6th at the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Kampala, Uganda at 4 p.m. Engine Firat then face Namibia on Tuesday 10th September at the Orlando Stadium in Johannesburg, South Africa at 7 p.m. Catch the matches live on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Wiki hii kwenye mkulima tutakuza ndizi.
Walianza kutupatia mbegu kama 10-20. Basi tulipopanda zile, basi tukaona hizo zina manufaa zaidi kuliko zile zetu za mwanzoni.
Kisha tujifunze kuhusu mafuta ya nazi.
Mafuta yetu ni meupe kabisa, kwa sababu ni ya kunywa na ni ya kupikia.
Alafu tuelekee Ganze, tukuze makonge.
Kilimo cha mkonge kilinipatia ajira mimi na kimenifundishia watoto na wale ambao wako karibu na mimi wanakula hiyo kilimo ya makonge.
Ungana nasi Jumamosi saa 10:30 hapa KBC Channel 1.
Have you ever asked yourself, what is skating? Skating is both an outdoor and an indoor activity. Most people do this skating activity for their leisure.
I have chosen one of my best books from within the library. It is called Little Lost Puppy. Oh, and you can see the beautiful puppy over here. He does look a bit lost.
Drab, drab, locks, drab, drably. Drab, drab, locks, drab, drably.
Today I'm going to show you how to make the yummiest bread omelette at the comfort of your home.
Thank you for staying with Channel 1. This is BizCheck. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, we'd like to have a conversation on matters environmental and social governance when it comes to business practices. And we will get an understanding of what exactly this means and why it is important for businesses to ensure that they are sustainable. And this conversation is happening with Collins Nkonge, who is an ESG and sustainability consultant. He is on my immediate left, as well as Bernard Kiragu, who is the executive director at SGB and Co Africa. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Karibuni sana. Maybe we can just start with what is ESG, you know, for people to understand the basics. I'll start with you, Collins.
Thank you very much, Betty. I mean, ESG is basically, it's a set of environmental and social governance metrics which are used to assess the sustainability performance either of an organization or even a country. You see what I mean? So for a sum up, you can say that ESG is a decision-making tool. It's an assessment tool, and at the same time, I would like to say it's a risk assessment tool at the same time. What I mean by this is there are specific environmental metrics that you encounter under ESG, social metrics and governance metrics. When I talk about this is, for example, under environmental issues, you'll find that we have initiatives like greenhouse gas emissions, how you are emitting, or rather, let me use the simplified word like polluting your environment. And then we have issues to do with biodiversity. When you hear people talking about biodiversity loss, how our economic activities are affecting our biodiversity. We have issues to do with waste management and even water usage. When you come to social issues, that's when you can talk of matters to do with your community engagement. How are you treating communities that are under your jurisdiction of operation? And then we have issues to do with employees' welfare. For instance, if I can give a very small example, is for example when you talk of maternity leave, right? So when it comes to ESG, you have to ask yourself, what more can you do, right? You have to, for example, provide feeding rooms for your employees. For those who don't have, you really need to take care of a lot of issues that are beyond what is envisaged in your contract. And then next, you can talk of matters to do with the diversity, inclusion, and equity. And then under governance, you have matters to do with whistleblowing, transparency, disclosure. In that we say under governance, that's where the sustainability ownership takes place. So basically, environmental, social, and governance issues are elements that are supposed to actually guide institutions in achieving their sustainability.
Right.
Yeah.
And to bring you into the conversation, Bernard, why is this important?
Well, why is it important? There's no option really, because we need to discuss. You start a business, you want it to outlive you as a vision bearer. So you must set the framework that enables the sustainability, or rather future-proofing of the business. And that's why the G is important, because you set up the governance framework is very important. However, not to say that E and S are less important. None can exist in isolation, but the G is very important. We hold quarterly master classes, and one of the questions we always have is, what comes first between the E, the S, and the G? And the opinion is as varied and as wide as the classes we have, and there's no wrong answer. But from me as a governance practitioner, I feel the G is very important, because it enables you as the leadership to set the right tone to how we're going to deal with all of these matters. But I'm very passionate about the S, which is not receiving the attention it deserves. We all know about the E. Everyone is currently talking about COP29 happening later in the year, where there's a lot of focus on the E. But the S is really what we all live, and very important, because it talks about things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Cuts across all organizations. And so there's no saying that ESG only applies to listed companies or the big companies. Cuts across all organizational setups. Yes.
And when you talk about these matters, ESG, you've said it does not just apply to the big guys. Even SMEs, at any level really, they should be keen on it. Do you see this happening? Are people or are businesses taking ESG metrics up?
Actually, even before I come to your question, I would like to add to what Bernarda said. You asked why this is very important. I think every brand out there they are looking for a level of differentiation. You want to retain your top talents. You want to achieve your market share. You want your share price to be up. So these are few, or rather these are some of the quick advantages I can think of when you integrate ESG in your strategy. Just to go back to what you've asked, is whether businesses, whether small or large, are taking up these initiatives. I will tell you for a fact that everybody is and should be considering ESG. Why am I saying this? We are moving into an era where investors and even customers are demanding sustainability-oriented businesses. For example, I'm foreseeing this in next 5 to 6 years to come. It will be very difficult for any organization to succeed in banking, or to succeed in securing funding, when you don't have anything to show as far as ESG integration is concerned. Because banks are the enablers of all these issues, right? Their investors and their funding partners are demanding for this, and they need to screen their books. So that means if we have to benefit from the banking sector as an organization, then we need to do this. But I like saying that we should not do this from a compliance perspective. let's do it because we want to contribute and actually create positive impact, because I believe COVID-19 taught us a lesson. That if you relate very well with your community, then these make sense. Let me give you a very good example, Betty. Let's look at the supply chain, for example, performance of an organization, right? There is what we call the supply chain code of conduct, whereby institutions are supposed to actually set aside initiatives, or rather supplying jobs for the young people, for the women, for the people with disability, and actually even outsourcing outside. But then what do you find? Very few organizations have these practices in place. But then assume you are an institution that actually obliges to these initiatives. What does that mean? You are really contributing to the economic development of not only the society you're living in, but the entire nation as a whole. Because what we are finding is, if businesses do not adjust to what the future holds, then they are bound to be flushed away by whatever is coming. For instance, if you talk on matters climate change, it's affecting everyone. And if you don't combat it, then it will be a problem. And I'll go back to the banking sector, for example. If the banking sector do not help their, for example, the agribusiness, they don't help those institutions in the agribusiness to combat climate change, it means the people in the agribusiness will not have any output any longer, right? And if the agribusiness people are out of business, then the banks are out of business. You see what I mean? It's interconnected. So everybody is supposed to be in this ship. Nobody should be left out, whether small or large.
Right, nobody should be left out.
Nobody should be left out.
Clearly, business is no longer just about the bottom line. It's about how
Exactly.
you achieve the bottom line.
Exactly.
So, as people who are in business, what have you seen in terms of uptake, considering that I'm sure ESG metrics and you know, having the sustainability reporting, it is an expense for a business. So what have you witnessed in that front, Bernard?
Well, I think you call it right, an expense. We see it as an investment.
Right.
One, I believe there is a business case for investing in the ESG practices. It pays back. You treat your employees right. I mean, they work very well. Treat your customers right. They're there with you, and they'll keep buying, and they'll keep buying. So there is a business case, and I do not believe it affects negatively the profitability of businesses. Just that we have to play the long game and keep doing the right thing. I'd want to stick to local examples of who have been affected by poor social practices, which affect market share. I think a few years ago we heard about what happened to Kakuzi, where an issue not to do with their business, really about an issue to do with the community, led to their main buyer refusing to accept their supplies. We have another instance where recently there were elections to do for tea factories, where a supplier, a key buyer also refuses to buy tea from the factories that are affected if certain individual is confirmed or elected as a director because of a past incident that happened.
Right.
So it is hitting us directly. Locally, we've seen even with this, the recent demonstrations we had, where certain service providers were being sort of blacklisted, or people wanted to walk away saying they denied us connectivity during these demonstrations, so we should walk with our feet. So we are living through that. We're living through that, and there's no going back. And yes, let's just do the right thing, and we'll get the benefits as corporates.
Right. Let me just take a quick break here. I'm informed that we need to go for a link that is happening on police reforms. Let's listen into that.
To the Inspector General. The other remaining cadres of ranks are not derogable. The Commission cannot delegate those one to the Inspector General because the law prohibits. And these range from Assistant Superintendent of Police to Senior Assistant Inspector General. I'll be talking to that sometime later. However, in this delegation, determination and approval of decisions under delegated power remains exclusive with the National Police Service Commission. So there is a limitation to the delegation, and the Inspector General and the commanders have continued to exercise that delegation diligently and with a lot of caution as it deserves. Allow me to mention a few updates on police salaries. One, the national government administration, under the leadership of His Excellency the President, you will recall, pledged to improve terms and conditions of service for police officers. In fulfillment of the promise and pledges, the government established the Maraga Task Force, whose recommendation include review and increase in police officers' salaries. Pursuant to this recommendation, and in accordance with the mandate of the National Police Service Commission, the Commission has reviewed and increased the salary of police constable from a basic salary per month at entry. At entry, we mean a fresh constable who have just left college, from Kenya shilling 21,645 to 25,645. This is equivalent to an increment of 4,000 higher. This implies, again, the longest serving police constable will earn a minimum monthly gross salary. This is gross, including all allowances, of Kenya shilling 50,145 up to a maximum of Kenya shilling 69,640. What I mean by the longest serving police constable, our structure allows a police officer to serve up to 20 notches of salary increment each year. So when you begin, you start at notch 1, which is 25,645. The following year, you move to notch 2, and you serve in that one rank for up to 20 years if you must, or if promotion hasn't come, and that structure allows that. So when I say the maximum, that is a constable who have served 20 years plus, he's already exceeded, because even without promotion and change of rank, we give incremental notches every year. On the same note, the Commission has increased the salary of a Senior Assistant Inspector General from a monthly basic salary at entry of that rank. Remember, this now is on the other extreme end. The other ranks are in between there. From Kenya shilling 200,899 to Kenya shilling 221,915. This is equivalent to 21,026 shilling higher. So this is the senior most in the ranks that the Commission consider not state officers. Is the Senior Assistant Inspector General, is just below the DIG. So you can see the junior.
That is Eliud Kinuthia, who is the National Police Service Commission chairperson, and he is addressing the press there on an update on police reforms on matters including salaries as well as conduct and promotion in the police service. Our very own John Kahiro is on the ground, and he will be giving us an update in our subsequent bulletins. In studio, we continue with our conversation on matters sustainability in business, with a focus on environmental and social as well as governance practices. And the conversation is with Collins Nkonge, who is an ESG and a sustainability consultant, as well as Bernard Kiragu, the Executive Director of SGB and Co Africa. When before we took that link, we were talking on matters of investing in ESG metrics, and Bernard, you were giving us your thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Collins, on that.
Actually, if you ask me, I would say ESG for me is not a leakage for any organization, but rather an injection.
Right.
What ESG does is, I mean, let's look at the benefit of integrating sustainability into your business. We are talking about matters brand reputation. We are talking about matters profitability and cost effectiveness. We are talking matters about achieving competitive advantage in the market. If you look at all these issues, actually what they do is they are an advantage to your bottom line. What they do is they actually add to your profitability. So if you ask me, is those organizations that do not invest in ESG are actually on the verge to being phased out of the market as compared to those who are integrating these initiatives. So for me, I think the investment, the benefit supersedes the investment value. Let me give you an example, or let me just give you a trend that is currently in the market as we speak. You find, for example, Betty, investors are requesting institutions to have chief sustainability officers in the organizations. Why are they saying this? It's because they want these initiatives carried all the way from the board level so that there is ownership of these initiatives. Nobody wants sustainability in any organization to be considered as a box-ticking initiative. It really should be something that is contributing to the impact of whatever each and every organization or a country is doing. So for me, I think if an investor, or if I am an investor of an institution and I'm saying, for example, kindly let's consider these initiatives, then they should be to the benefit of my investment. So if you look at it, ESG and for example, the entire sustainability spectrum contribute to the profitability of any organization and cost-saving initiatives rather than being a leakage to their books. So for me, that's my take.
Thank you. Bernard, you mentioned that you're very passionate about the S that is not given as much importance as the E and the G. When you talk about the social bit of it, is it CSR or is it beyond CSR?
Well, CSR was it many years ago. So we really need to look at entrenching other aspects of the S. And it basically goes beyond CSR. Because CSR, what does it take? A visit to a children's home once a year for Christmas? How sustainable is that model? It is not. We want to urge organizations to really keep doing right. And simply dealing with the people, the communities whom you impact, and enabling them to have better living standards is really, really it. And the easiest way for organizations to look at what to adopt as practices is to look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and you'll get an idea of what you'd want to align. You want to align with as an organization. There are 17 SDGs, as they are called, developed by the United Nations, UN. So the issue is, from there you spot for choice. What is important to us, and what can we do about this? And we want to see. You can start from. It's better to start from in, out. By addressing issues to do with what are the specific gender issues that we need to deal with. Are we balanced from a diversity perspective? And once you start addressing this, it will come naturally. Look at diversity, even including with things to do with age, not just gender, and so that we really have an all-round approach to this. How are we treating our suppliers? Do we ensure that they are trying to adopt these good practices that we have as well? And that's really how it keeps going round and cascades throughout the organization backward, and also into the customer-facing front as well.
Right. When you're implementing these ESG metrics, especially when it comes to investors, when they want to, decide whether they'll put money into a business or not, there have to be some hard conversations and decisions that have to be made. Have you seen investors maybe blacklisting a certain industry or a certain group of people because of, how they conduct their business?
Actually, it's not only blacklisting or rather even losing investors. What happens is your biggest stakeholder is the customer. What do they or how do they perceive your organization? You're bringing up something that we call business cases in sustainability and ESG. And I'll give an example that I think everybody relates with. And if you can allow me, I can name the brand. It's Nike, for example, what they did the other day. Where you claim to be a very big supporter of sustainability, but then you're laying off the entire department, or rather half of the department that is handling sustainability. Where you want to greenwash yourself.
They're not here to defend themselves.
Yeah, they are not here to defend themselves, but it's in the public domain. Everybody can go and you can even go and check through your research. So investors indeed have actually pulled out of some of the businesses simply because they are not putting in the consideration that is needed when it comes to these ESG initiatives. The reason why they're doing this is because when we started this, we said ESG is a risk management tool. So if you don't include it in your business, then it means there are risks that you're not putting into consideration, and they might as well come to affect you in the future. Giving an example, right now, look at what is happening. The young people have started knowing what really they want in life. If we have an organization that doesn't consider the position of the young people in the operations, what this means is it will be in the back books with the young people. I'm giving an example with when you produce a sustainability report, for instance, as Ben has said, it's very good to categorize your employees so that if I'm a young person and I want to join the organization, I want to know, do I fit in these organizations? It is narrowed down. For example, let me use a global standard, for example. I like GRI any day, anytime. For me, I call it the Bible of sustainability. If you look at its metrics, it really helps each and every level of stakeholder to make a decision based on what they want in a certain organization, especially on the on the social impact element. So for me, I believe not only investors, but every aspect of every stakeholder in any organization can make a very informed decision on an organization based on their performance. There was a local company that produced a sustainability report and said that the gender pay gap ratio was 50%. It brought an outcry. I believe you can imagine what that means. Male to female pay ratio is 50%. What that means is if a man is earning 100 bob, their lady colleagues are earning 50 shillings. So what does that mean? That means all the top talents that are female will not want to be associated with that institution because they know when I'm going there, I won't get what I'm worth. But then I appreciate also at the same time organizations that are doing this because they are trying to own up and actually try to tell their publics that yes, we know this is a problem in institutions and we are working towards working on it. At the same time, you'll find organizations that have only one woman in their board. So this means that we have no one to represent female issues in that level of an organization. So again, we appreciate institutions that are appreciating that yes, we have a deficiency of this issue, but then we have put certain measures to mitigate this kind of a risk. Because what this means is we will be missing out on very many opportunities or benefit that comes with this level or rather class of people as far as our performance is concerned.
Right.
So that's basically what it means, missing and hitting on ESG as far as an organization performance is concerned.
Right. Bernard, any thoughts to add on that?
I simply say that one, investors will only want to come where they feel their money will earn them the due return. And how they check is really, one, looking at the governance structure, is it correct? Then look at the diversity elements. And then for environment, it's probably easier to look at what kind of impact are you having? Maybe not all of us, not all organizations will have an impact, but for banks, I think, which Collis is very passionate about, they'll come up with products that want to promote green investments, really as a contribution to sustainability. So it is a challenge and a call for all of us to look at aspects. There's so much we can do. So sadly, we are slow adopters of this, and it is really a call for us to not to wait for the regulators to come and tell us to do this report, because there's so much we are doing. We just need to structure it correctly, and then we do it one organization at a time.
Mm-hmm. So as we come to a close of the conversation, gentlemen, I'll give each of you 2 minutes to give us your closing remarks. In there include the way forward for ESG reporting in businesses in Kenya. Start with you, Collins.
The way forward. For me, I don't think I would put it the way forward, but where to begin, because...
Where to begin?
This is what I would like to say when it comes to ESG and sustainability integration in any organization, that it's a step-by-step initiative. You need to appreciate that for you to get this right, you'll make mistakes, and you'll have to accept that it's a baby step. But then at the same time, a very important thing to talk about, or rather to mention in this, is innovation. It's very good for institutions to adopt tech solutions that can help them streamline their sustainability initiatives. I mean, when it comes to data collection, data evaluation, because continuity and compatibility of their reports is what matters. So when you're using old, or rather spreadsheets, to collect your data when it comes to sustainability, then it means in the future you're going to encounter very many problems as far as, tracking the continuity of your data is concerned. And I don't know why Bernard has not mentioned this, because when I was doing my research, I realized it's the only organization in this country that has a generative AI tool that helps organization in actually auto-drafting their report, which I was very happy about. What this means is sustainability is becoming a very cost-effective initiative for an organization, if now we are having technologies that can help companies auto-draft their reports and actually predict their performance in the future. So for me, I would say let companies adopt very simple frameworks. For me, I can always recommend the Global Compact principles. You can start from there. The SDGs start from there, and if you're looking for a very good global framework, GRI is very good for banks. I know we have the TCFDs. So for me, I think let organizations start small. As they learn these, and everything will be right for everyone.
Start small, take it step by step.
Exactly.
Bernard?
Correct. The bit about tech, I was saving that for last. But yes, very important, because this helps. We don't want to make ESG data collection and reporting a pain. So with tech, it will support organizations, and should help us with the adoption of ESG and sustainability reporting. So that is where we need to keep going. But it's important for us to enlighten everyone about ESG. People really are afraid of acronyms, and it's important that we just really demystify it. And that's my clarion call today. We're hoping that we'll be able to do this individual by individual, so that now we can develop a community or a society that embraces ESG and sustainability practices.
Awesome. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. That is Collins Nkonge, who is an ESG and sustainability consultant, as well as Bernard Kiragu, Executive Director at SGB and Co Africa. We have been talking about sustainable business practices and why it is important for businesses to not only look at the bottom line, but how it is achieved. Well, we want to take a quick break. When we come back, we will have a conversation on matters the public wage bill. Do stay with us.
Ask yourself, what is skating? Skating is both an outdoor and an indoor activity. Most people do this skating activity for their leisure.
I have chosen one of my best books from within the library. It is called Little Lost Puppy. Oh, and you can see the beautiful puppy over here. He does look a bit lost.
Drab dreadlocks, drab dreadly. Drab dreadlocks, drab dreadly.
Today I'm going to show you how to make the yummiest bread omelette at the comfort of your home.
When it comes to disabilities, we should understand that disability is diverse, and none of the disabilities that we have in this world is better than the other.
Mtoto akilia kidogo sio kumnyamazisha na simu. Akililia simu ajiangushe chini. When we grew up, you cried for a sweet. Your mother would not buy.
Before you're empowered, first you should love yourself. Kwa sababu being person with disability, it's not an easy task. Kwa sababu kuna stigma.
Our goal is to raise awareness, challenge misconceptions, and celebrate the resilience and contributions of persons with disabilities.
Mtazamaji, tumekuandalia taarifa zinazogonga vichwa vya vyombo vya habari kutoka hapa jijini Nairobi na pia mashinani.
Wanahabari zaidi ya ubora wao wako ange kukuletea habari pindi zinapochipuka kutoka pembe zote za Kenya.
Kwenye kipindi cha Tamrini tunakuletea mazungumzo ya moja kwa moja kufafanua na kuangazia masuala yanayokuhusu wewe mtazamaji.
Kumbuka, taarifa yenye thamani daima hupokewa kwa amani.
Hivyo basi usikose kuungana nasi kila siku ya wiki.
Tukupakulie na tukutaarifu taarifa yenye mnato kwenye runinga unayoienzi. Kwenye kurunzi mashinani,
sisi DC.
Wiki hii kwenye mkulima tutakuza ndizi.
Walianza kutupatia mbegu kama 10-20. Basi tulipopanda zile, basi tukaona hizo zina manufaa zaidi kuliko zile zetu za mwanzoni.
Kisha tujifunze kuhusu mafuta ya nazi.
Mafuta yetu ni meupe kabisa, kwa sababu ni ya kunywa na ni ya kupikia.
Alafu tuelekee Ganze, tukuze makonge.
Kilimo cha mkonge kilinipatia ajira mimi na kimenifundishia watoto, na wale ambao wako karibu na mimi wanakula hiyo kilimo ya makonge.
Ungana nasi Jumamosi saa 10:30 hapa KBC Channel 1.
You are watching BizCheck on KBC Channel 1, and thank you very much for keeping us company. My name is Betty Kiptum. In this next 40 minutes or so, we shall be talking about matters the public wage bill. Fiscal sustainability of the total public wage bill to the total ordinary revenue came down from 51.54% in the year 2017-2018 to 39.22% in the years the financial year 2023-2024. What has it taken for the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to get this number down despite the actual figures going up? To have this conversation is Lynn Mengich, who is the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Betty.
Karibu sana.
Yes,
we are talking of around 1.17 trillion currently in the immediate ended financial year. Mm-hmm. How did we get there?
We got there in terms of the percentage. Mm-hmm. Historically, there was no commission, of course, we know that. So before 2010, the salaries were reviewed by different commissions that was set up temporarily, committees, and therefore, we got to a situation where there was no one body really focusing on wage bill and looking at what it means to have a wage bill that is fiscally unsustainable. So it is for that reason that the citizens of this country then decided in 2010 that it's time to have a commission that will really focus on the wage bill. And the drafters of the Constitution then were concerned about a few things. The first one was, if we're spending so much money on the wage bill, it actually means that we are crowding out finances for development and other government priorities. And the question was then, how much really should the country spend on wage bill without compromising on development and other government priorities? That was a huge concern at that point in time because of the historical issues. But the other concern also was about the equity and fairness in pay, because if you have very many institutions deciding on pay, and of course there was also the ability to negotiate with the trade unions, and at that point it was almost whoever is able to bargain the most was able to get the higher pay. What we ended up was salary structures that are inequitable, that you will find a public officer who is doing the same job earning 2-3 times the other. So that is another problem that you will see that in the Constitution, it was a concern by the citizens. So that is how we got there. It is a historical issue, but it reached a point where the citizens realized it is not sustainable, and it's time to have a commission that will address this issue.
Right. And now bringing that number down from 51.5% to 39.2% and looking to even take it further to below 35%. How was this achieved?
The Commission has taken very many strategic initiatives, and I'll share a few of them. But even as I do that, it's just to remind us that when we talk about the wage bill, we're looking at the ratio, the ratio of wage bill to revenue. And that is in the Public Finance Management Act, that requires that not more than 35% of the revenue is spent on the wage bill. So from the onset, you realize that it is a ratio of revenue and the wage bill. That means to manage that, there are two things that you look at. The revenue must also grow, and then the number must also be contained. So over that period, let me say from the onset that we have seen a growth in the revenue, which has contributed to that trend. And then on the actual number of the wage bill itself, in absolute terms, has actually continued to rise. It has continued to rise over the period, and you will see that at the moment we are close to $1 trillion, right? 5 years ago, we were about 795 billion. So what then it's saying is that there is a trajectory of absolute amount growing, but the ratio has been contained. And therefore, getting to your question, Betty, is what has the Commission done to contain that wage bill? Right. But it's good to give the context so that as I answer, is to now say, why has the wage bill in absolute amount gone up, right? Because that's important to understand.
Right.
So if we look at the wage bill today, the growth in numbers has largely been in the healthcare, education, and security. Now, and that is the context of a country with a growing population. We are a developing country. And as a developing country, and our population is growing, and we know that we've got a young population, which means that all this young population have to be taken care of. So as a country, therefore, government has an obligation to provide education, healthcare, security. I'm picking those three. There are others. But the main driver for the rise in numbers is actually in those three sectors. And just to give you another point is that if you look at the total wage bill today, 50% of that wage bill goes to education, right? Just 50% goes to education. So that sometimes when we look at the wage bill and we hear, why did it grow? Let's understand the basis for the growth, that will continue. So the Commission therefore must be able then to say, yes, it is growing, but how do we ensure that we bring down the ratio? Not the absolute amount, but the ratio. And that means that the Commission then has had to take very strategic interventions to bring that down.
Right.
So let me then share what the Commission has done over that period.
Please go ahead.
The first driver of this wage bill is the review on the structures. You know, every institution and different sectors have a salary structure, right? That then determines how pay
moves from one year to the other. So the first thing the Commission did was to freeze a number of those salary structures. So, for example, in state corporations, the salary structures have been frozen for almost 10 years, actually. Meaning that although there is movement within the structure, it is minimal. But you cannot exceed, you cannot go above a certain figure. So that freeze of salary structures happened during that period. But on top of that, the Commission then has an obligation, as and when the economy is not able to sustain any increase, then the Commission must take measures. During this period, the last 6 years, the first one, we've frozen salary structures as a response to the COVID-19. Remember, 2019 happened, and the economy could not sustain any increase in pay. So there was a freeze in all salary structures in the public service. That took 2 years. After the 2-year period, then the Commission then reviewed again to see whether the economy is able to take up a review. So, and even as we then took the decision to review, it is reviewed in the context of what can the country afford.
Right.
So that takes a lot of discussion with the National Treasury, projections on wage bill to see what the country can sustain. So that's the first thing the Commission has done, is always ensure that any salary review is based on ability of the economy to sustain any review. The other thing the Commission has done over this period is to look at allowances. A number of times when we say pay in the public service, we forget that pay is not just the basic salary. There is a lot that is in allowances. And so we undertook a study to understand what are all these allowances. And we found out that, we have 247 allowances. That's huge. But they are not unique allowances. Sometimes it's just the nomenclature that is used differently, or it is the same allowance, but it is defined separately. So they are not unique allowances.
Right.
But nonetheless, all these allowances, on average, is about 40% of the total pay. So whenever we have a conversation around pay, it is important not to stop at basic salary. And even if you meet a public officer and you say what you earn, they will tell you the basic salary. They will not tell you the allowances, right?
That make the gross.
That make the gross.
Yeah.
Now, it is 40% on average, but in some institutions, it's more than 100%.
Okay.
And in some very few jobs, it is even 200%. So when we ignore to look at allowances, it means that there is something inside there that we are not looking at that will address two areas. One is equity, right? When you have allowances, remember these allowances are different from one institution to the other, right? So basic salary might be the same, but because we've got all these allowances, you end up with gross pay that not only is inequitable, but it is also not fiscally sustainable.
Okay.
So the Commission from the onset has not reviewed allowances at all. In fact, right from 2010, there has been no review of allowances. With the exception of house allowance, there was a small review, which we gave a review in the last review period, which was the last 2 years. Other than that, the review has been minimal on allowances. So what has the Commission then done? After that study, the Commission, with engagement from stakeholders, developed a framework, a policy framework to streamline allowances in the public service.
Right.
Now, to streamline allowances can only be done in phases. So phase 1 was to abolish any allowance that we could see is, one, it is amounting to double compensation. You're already being paid, but it's double compensation. We then also looked at allowances that were not advised by the Commission and have been introduced post the 2010 Constitution, which means that they were not properly set up. So we abolished a number of allowances, and it resulted in a saving of about 11 billion in total. So that was phase 1, to just simply abolish allowances. The second thing was to look at those allowances that you may not have an absolute number to say this is what an individual spends, because they are more facilitative, right? Because they are facilitative, they've got a lot of indirect costs that you may not see upfront. Let me give you an example for the common one of DSA or per diem, as is commonly known, right? Per diem is a driver for a lot of indirect costs. And what we found is that there were common locations for destinations for any government meetings for government employees, right? And this tended to be where the per diem or DSA is higher. So commonly everybody is going to Mombasa. Those in Western Kenya, they're either coming to Nairobi or also going to Mombasa. Those in Nairobi would never have a meeting in Nairobi because there is no per diem, right? So you might then say, fine, you're spending this money on DSA, but I can tell you the indirect costs are even higher. The cost of travel to these locations, the time spent to go to these locations. And I remember a governor, in fact, shared with us and said, almost every week I don't have anyone in the office because they are in
traveling all over the place.
Yes, so not only are you losing money, but there is no time actually spent to work in the office. So that's the second category of allowances where the Commission then took a view to streamline. And therefore, for DSA, we advised on a uniform rate across the country. It's across the country, it's a uniform rate, so that we stop choosing to go to the location that is farthest. But we can then, even if we must have those meetings, at least you can do that within your locality.
Right.
There are also other allowances that we looked at, like the task force allowance, internal task force and internal committees. Just to explain what that meant is, this is a situation where institutions who are constituting task forces internally to discharge a mandate that is part of the mandate of the institution.
Okay.
Right? Or committee is the same thing. So you form a committee to discharge a mandate that is within your responsibility to discharge. But because I brought in together people from different functions, you brought in someone from HR, from finance, from another department, then you say it is internal committee, so they are paid sitting allowances, right? So we abolished those internal committees and internal task forces because they were just wasteful, and it's also double compensation. Another allowance that we looked at is plenary sitting for Parliament and for MCAs. And plenary sitting meant that every time there is a session in Parliament, you're paid a sitting allowance, but remember you have a salary. So again, it was a clear area of double compensation.
Right.
So we abolished that for both arms of government, for the legislature, both at the National Assembly and at the county governments. The other allowance that we also abolished was it was called a taxable car allowance. And that allowance has an interesting background to it, is that before the 2010 Constitution, certain government officers were allowed to import cars duty-free. Okay, so you imported a car duty-free. Not everybody, it was largely cabinet secretaries, permanent secretaries, and judges. So as you import this car, then it is duty-free. Then the Constitution then clearly says that no one is exempted from paying tax. And remember, at this point, the Constitution was, the Commission was already in place. But what then happened is the head of public service then decided to convert that duty-free into a taxable car allowance, which was 2 million at that point. And over the years, that 2 million became 5 million, became 7 million, became 10 million. And just to explain what this allowance really is for is that the state officer, the only thing you needed to do is just go to a showroom, pick a car, bring the receipt, and you get your money, you take your car for personal use. Okay. Now remember, these are state officers who are already given a car with a driver, fully maintained and fueled by the taxpayers. And then you are given another car for your personal use. So the commission abolished, but I must say, unfortunately for the judges went to court on the matter. As a commission, we felt strongly there is an area of conflict of interest. The court ruled that they are entitled as judges to that personal car. The commission has appealed. We don't know what it will look like, but it is our hope that the taxpayers will not end up paying for personal benefits.
Right.
Because that is really for personal use. Yeah.
You've talked about a number of changes that were made and a lot of costs were saved. How did the commission, or how is the commission cushioning public servants, especially from the economic shocks that have been? There was the COVID-19, there is inflation year in, year out. How does the commission ensure that even if you're, stopping the double allowances and all that, public servants can still survive in these tough economic times?
Now, the first thing is that the way the salary structures are designed in the public service is that there is a minimum and maximum that is given over the period. So what we have been freezing is the structure. Now, within that salary structure, there are notch increases. Yeah. So a notch is that you can move from within that structure. You can still move. The salaries can move. So during this period, there has been that automatic annual increment. It averages 3%. So that is what cushions for inflation. But I must add that we cannot cushion 100%. Because when we talk about the economy is tough, inflation is gone up, it just doesn't affect only the public officers. It affects everyone. So to that extent, we can't say we are cushioning 100%. It's just not practical because the same taxpayer is going through the same hardship. So to that extent, therefore, there is some cushioning, but that cushion is not to 100%, and it can never be to 100%. Yeah.
Let's talk about the productivity of the labor force. In Africa, we rank 26 out of 55, and globally we are at 153 out of 189. That's according to the International Labour Organization. Is the Commission doing anything to improve productivity of public servants?
Thank you, Betty. That's actually one of the initiatives that the Commission has put in place.
Right.
It's one of our mandates. And just to go back to our mandate, as you are aware, is to review and set salaries for remuneration and benefits for state officers, and to advise for both the national and county government. And then in that, the Constitution then spells out the principles, right? Now, the first principle is what we talked about earlier, about to ensure fiscal sustainability of the wage bill. But the second principle talks about to recognize performance and productivity. And that's why I will speak on that productivity from that context, that it is actually, the Commission is obliged to do that. It is part of our mandate. The other principles is, of course, to do with ensuring that the government is able to attract and retain requisite skills, then fairness and transparency. Then there is another principle in the SRC Act, which is equal pay for work of equal value. So as the Commission is discharging its mandate, it has to keep the 5 principles in mind. So now let me come to your question on productivity. So the Commission has the mandate to recognize performance and productivity. What does that mean? It actually means that as the Commission either sets or advises on remuneration and benefits, then the question of productivity must come in, right? Is this workforce productive? So that the pay ideally should not just be about inflation. Inflation is just one element, which we look at, cost of living. But the bigger question also is about labor productivity, right? so that when we compensate, we are also compensating for increased labor productivity. And the other factors, of course, we look at is the obvious one is fiscal sustainability and equity of pay, because then we must see whether the pay for one institution is much higher than the pay from another institution. But central to that discussion is therefore labor productivity. So if we go back to the statistics that you have shared, where is Kenya? We're not doing very well in terms of labor productivity. And the question therefore is, which even as we look at this, is Kenya, we pride ourselves having the best talent in Africa. And I believe, and I actually support that. I think we have very good talent. So then the question is, why are we ranked very low, both in Africa
and global?
And that has been a key concern for the Commission. But we also recognize as a Commission that our role in productivity is only limited to the extent of remuneration and benefits. But that productivity is a wider topic that requires other stakeholders. And the Commission cannot speak about productivity in isolation of other institutions. And therefore, the Commission, recognizing that we need to collaborate with other arms of government, then through the second wage bill conference, which was held in 2019, the issue about productivity was discussed as something that government needs to look at. There were some resolutions in that wage bill conference, and as a result of those resolutions, two things happened. One is that there is a framework to recognize performance and productivity, which was launched by the Commission in 2023. So that is now operational. What that means is that there is a framework to recognize when institutions exceed their targets, or they must exceed. They are either very good or they have exceeded.
Right.
But the other thing that has happened is that productivity has now been embedded in the performance contracting cycle, so that all institutions are now required as part of their performance contracting to look at productivity. So what has the Commission achieved over this period is, through the wage bill conference, to bring the discussion of labor productivity as a central discussion in performance management in government. But I must add that we are really very far from getting where we should be. We must develop productivity indices in all our institutions. We have not succeeded. We are still very far. The Commission, together with the National Productivity Center, piloted productivity measurements in 24 state corporations. About 5 have actually developed their productivity matrices. So there is there's some baby steps that have been done. National Productivity Center, for example, have now picked a model for Kenya, which is called the OMAX model, on how productivity should be measured. So that is good, that at least we are clear how productivity will be measured through using the OMAX model. We also have a curriculum at KSG, which was developed jointly with the Commission, KSG, and other stakeholders, and KSG is providing that training to build capacity on productivity. But that is not enough. Much more needs to be done if we've got to improve productivity as a country. And I must add, Betty, that unless Kenya improves productivity, we will not make huge strides. Productivity has a lot of benefits, If we are more productive, then our economy will grow faster. We will create more jobs. We will pay the public service better. So yes, as our term comes to an end, because in the next few weeks, my term will come to an end, it's one of the strategic areas that we are really handing over to the next Commission and all the other stakeholders who have been collaborating with us to take it to the next level. Yes.
Before we close the conversation, balancing between reducing the wage bill and handling the unemployment issue in Kenya, please comment on that.
It's a question of chicken and egg, right?
Right.
If we really want to create employment, one, we must look at both private sector and public sector. Growth of employment should be driven by private sector, not public sector. And therefore, government must continuously push for enabling the private sector to grow. And therefore, that is where the employment will largely come from, so that government remains at creating an enabling environment so that we create more jobs. But at the moment, we are now in a situation where government is one of the major employers, and there is nothing wrong with that. But we must not employ at the expense of triggering growth in the economy. And that's why it is still a concern that we are employing in areas where we shouldn't. We've got a lot of concerns in the county governments, to the extent that their wage bill in some cases is close to 70%, because if you are spending 70% of their wage bill of your revenue on the wage bill, then what else are you doing? So bet it is a chicken and egg, but it must begin with accepting that growth has to come from private sector, and government goes back to creating an enabling environment for that growth to happen, so that we can now generate more jobs.
Right. I'll give you 30 seconds to give us your closing remarks kindly.
Thank you very much. In closing, I want to say that the conversation of wage bill must continue to be central to any conversation in government. It is an area of interest to all taxpayers because if we crowd out finances for development and other government priorities, then we are not going to create even the jobs we were talking about earlier. We will not be able to grow our economy the way we should. And we reach a situation where there is an imbalance in what is priority for us. So wage bill must remain central. The Commission has put a lot of interventions. The trajectory is in the right direction. And we strongly believe that it will actually get to 35% in the next few years. The last wage bill conference, the third wage bill conference, the resolutions are all geared towards getting to 35% by 2028. But therefore, it remains for all actors in government to really implement the resolutions of the wage bill conference. So lastly, as I close, is really to thank all the stakeholders who have collaborated with the Commission, worked with us over this period, to the public who are always urging the Commission to keep doing the right thing. We got a lot of that, a lot of messages of goodwill from the stakeholders, from the public, and it was encouraging to see that the public actually know that this is an important space and they must continuously speak about it because it's important for all of us. So let's all continue talking about the wage bill. Let's keep the ball and make sure that we get to 35%. But even when we get to 35, we must not rest there. We must make sure that it is properly contained and that we do not lose track of why the Commission was set in place.
Right.
Yes, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us, and all the very best.
Thank you, Betty.
Asante sana. That was Lynn Mengich, who is the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. We have been talking about the public wage bill, how to make sure that it comes to below 35%, currently at about 39%. My name is Betty Kiptum. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Bye-bye.
In spring and autumn, Japan's forests are ripe with mushrooms. Of all the many types, shiitake are perhaps the mushrooms most often used in washoku or Japanese cuisine. Both fresh and dried shiitake are used. The dried mushrooms are first rehydrated by soaking in water. Shiitake produce the umami flavor that's the basis of all washoku. Not only delicious, but also safe and chemical-free, Japanese dried shiitake are growing in popularity abroad. 16 countries now import major quantities of these delicious meaty mushrooms that are often cooked in the same way as steak. Oita, in the southern island of Kyushu, is Japan's largest producer of dried shiitake mushrooms. 70% of Oita is forested, and these forests contain many broadleaf trees like oak, and especially sawtooth oak, that are ideal for shiitake cultivation. There are two methods of shiitake cultivation. They can be grown indoors on artificial mushroom beds and on logs out in the forest. Shiitake for eating fresh are usually grown indoors, while shiitake for drying are grown outdoors on logs. For indoor cultivation, mushroom beds of finely crushed wood with added nutrients are inoculated with shiitake spores. Our organic shiitake mushrooms are grown on beds made from freshly cut sawtooth oak, grown right here in Oita. To help the mushrooms grow, we infuse the beds with specially selected natural nutrients. Temperature, humidity, and light are precisely regulated to ensure uniform results. In the outdoor method, logs inoculated with shiitake spores are left stacked up in the forest for the mushrooms to grow naturally. The first step is to cut trees to make the logs. Sawtooth oak is an evergreen, acorn-bearing tree. This is shiitake farmer Kurahashi Kiyoharu and his son, Seizo. After felling the trees, they leave them to dry naturally for several months. The sawtooth oak is fast-growing, and it takes just 10 years for a new tree to grow back from the stump. After the timber has dried, they cut it into 1 meter lengths, then drill holes to implant plugs containing the mushroom spores. The inoculated logs are then stacked up deep in the forest. They'll be ready to harvest in about 2 years. See how the sunlight comes through the trees onto the logs. That's because we thinned out the forest this year. You need lots of light to get really good shiitake. Shiitake cultivation requires careful and regular thinning of the surrounding trees, a process that also helps preserve